Hello gang and welcome, it's Deltia from DeltiasGaming.com. The long-awaited Burning Butcher is back for ESO 2.0. This is a stamina-based melee DKA using damage over time effects for big-time damage. If you're looking for something to play in PvE, Dungeons, Trials, or Dragonstar Arena, this is for you. This build we're going to cover skills, gear, 501 champion point setups, and combat. Let's get started, the Burning Butcher for Elder Scrolls Online 2.0 and beyond. Alright, we're in the good old Wayrest sewers, and there's an actual really helpful boss if you want to kind of improve your DPS and or test it. It's good old Slime Craw. So Wayrest sewers, for those that don't know, is in Stormhaven, Daggerfall Covenant side. You can join this pretty much at any level. You can use the group finder tool or go to one of the dungeons in your area if you're EP or Aldemary Dominion, and it will unlock this icon here. Oh, now we got a little crocodile. So I'm going to do my damage here and explain what I'm doing in detail afterwards, so you can kind of get a glimpse of how it is we're going about damage. How dare you attack me? Alright, so with this setup, you got this guy here, 500,000 HP. It's not going to take you super long to kill him, but it's going to give you 30 or 40 seconds of good amount of damage that you can parse or test your DPS. Now, if you're on PC, we have fancy add-ons that can do this. If you're on console, really you can just time it. So if you start the DPS test, you know, instead of a stopwatch and your time is 30 seconds, well, if you improve that to 28 and so on, that's how you can improve your DPS or know that you're improving. Yes, I want add-ons on consoles just as much as you, but, you know, it's just what we have to deal with. Okay, so for this build, what I want you guys to get a hold of, it's going to be called ... Goose. Like duck, duck, goose, right? ... Goose. So for this build here, all we're doing is using Burning Breath. Does a big amount of damage over time. It gives us physical resistance or physical penetration, which will lower their armor, allowing us to hit harder. Most tanks run a physical resistance pierce armor debuff, but just in case if they don't, you're always going to have this up. Last 10 seconds. The second dot, very low cost, 5-meter range, unstable flame. This thing does a lot of damage. The trick with unstable flame is you don't want to recast it until the thing is completely finished the duration. Why? Because the damage increases the longer the dot is ticking. So you'll notice this is 10, this is 10.5. If you're doing medium weaves or holding down the trigger just a little bit in between these abilities, you won't run into that problem. Third ability is Flames of Oblivion. What's Flames of Oblivion? Basically, it's one of our major buffs that we need to have in order to get our weapon critical bonus. So you can get that via Flames of Oblivion, or you can get it in the Fighters Guild Expert Hunter, morphed into Evil Hunter is what I usually go with. This is very, very good for typical stamina builds, but I like this morph and this ability because it procs a damage over time effect. The whole thing of this build is centered around that Falcon Scoria gear. The more dots we have, the more likely we are to proc that dot. We are a Dunmer as well. Why does that matter? Well, Falcon Scoria is that flame damage. So I don't want to re-roll an entire new character with a Dunmer. And also we do get 6% stamina with a Dunmer as well. So it's not the worst stamina-based class. And especially if you like to play magic sometimes and stamina the other, this is a really good race for you. Okay, dot. This is just going to stay on our bar, toggled on. We're not going to turn it off, so don't hit your 3 key. And then Goose, Rapid Strikes. Rapid Strikes, the game considers this a channel, which is a damage over time. And so it's like doing puncturing sweeps or biting jabs for a Templar. So all these abilities are essentially going to proc that meteor. Now, you may get heavy damage based on randomness, or you may get not that much, but even single target, you can hold around 15,000 by just keeping these buffs up. And then good old Steel Tornado. Why? It's the best AoE in the game. Why not? And then Flawless Dawnbreaker on. Okay, so let's look at our stats real quick. If I have my Major Brutality up and my Minor Brutality, go back to my damage dealing bar and look at my stats. I'm at 4,000 weapon damage and 65% critical. So our back bar is what we use for buffs. Now, Razor Caltrops. This ability here is fantastic, but it comes in the Assault skill line. So you're going to need a PvP to get this. What it does is place a dot damage over time, a very long time, and this thing actually deals a lot of damage. Plus it snares. It's great for PvP, but it's fantastic for PvE. Not everyone's going to have access to this or have the stamina needed to constantly keep this up if it's 5,000. So if you don't, you have another option, which is Eruption. Last ability in Earth and Heart. Doesn't last as long, doesn't do as much damage, but it procs every 0.5 seconds. So you're getting 2 procs in 1 second, thus very, very likely to proc Valken Scoria. Two-hander. I don't use any abilities to do damage, but I do like Rally. Why? It lasts 33 seconds. So typically a parse is a minute from a minute and 30 seconds, or a boss fight. Unless you're doing Sanctum or something like that. So what you do is, you cast Rally before you engage on a target. Then, you go over here and use a potion that's going to last for 47 seconds at VR15. What's the math on that? Basically a minute and a half is roughly what you're looking at. And this will give you speed, stamina, and major brutality. So with one ability cast, one potion, once that thing's about to run out, you're looking at your entire time not having to recast one buff. And that's very, very important. Another thing about Razor Caltrops in the buff is 30-second duration. I typically don't take time to recast it after it's been going on. It's usually a DPS loss if I tend to recast it, and a huge stamina dump. So I'm only going to use this in the beginning. So I'm going to use that as I close the distance. I'm going to have Rally up. I'm not going to mess with Flames of Oblivion. It's double barred so it doesn't go on and off. And then Igneous Weapons. I don't even have this thing leveled up. Charge your weapons with volcanic power and temporarily increasing your damage, fully charged heavy attack. Both morphs are fantastic. So what I like to do is do Igneous Weapon and do medium weaves in between, because it says heavy attacks increase this. Now it's fully charged only. So if you're low on stamina and you're doing the fully charged heavy attacks, this is the morph for you. If you want to have more damage during execution phase, Molten Armaments is the better morph for you. And Molten Armaments probably is something better, but I don't know, I like this. Because it's only fully charged heavy attacks now, not medium waves. Okay. Then Executioner. Executioner is our damage dealing 5 meter rage, low cost finisher. So if you remember the DPS class, buff, spam, execute. So what we're going to do, back bar buffs, we're going to ... goose, and goose, rapid strikes. Just do a lot of damage. So let's see how this works. All right, Kfir, let's go ahead and pull. So I'm going to do Rally, Caltrops, Igneous. I'm going to get my 2 buffs up, and then Banner. All right. So now we're just going to go into watching what we're doing. So I'm doing a couple of these. Notice my buff timer shows Burning Breath counting down. Reapply it. Rapid Strikes. My potion's about to run out in 10 seconds, so I know that's when I'm going to have to recast it. So I'm going to do, and it's about 25% health, so we're going to bar swap. Light attack, boom. Light attack, Executioner. And I missed a weave there. Light attack, Executioner. And that's it. So with that parse there, we're looking at, what is it? Now that's only 30 seconds, so don't go all crazy. And we used an ultimate. But we're at 21,000, almost 22,000 damage. Now it's going to change greatly on your build and that sort of thing. But you can expect a pretty good amount of sustained, okay? Because your abilities are dots, they don't cost a whole lot, and you're relying on Valken Scoria to do damage. The proc didn't even proc that much. Now, the more targets around, the more likely this is to go up. But you can see these two are your bread and butter. An Unstable Flame, 12% damage. That's a lot. So make sure you're casting that appropriately. Now let's move on to the gear and show you what optimizes this and make it hit so hard. Right, we're on Inferno Negatia, and we're going to talk about gear. Now, keep in mind, I have best in slot, typically, gear. I know you guys don't have a lot of access to those sorts of things, or some of you do. Just keep in mind, doing best in slot in comparison to blue or purple gear is going to give you a couple percentage advantage. So it's not going to be so much if you're having, don't have that much champion points, you don't have the best in slot gear. Does it help? It absolutely does. But don't think that these builds can't be pulled off by someone that doesn't have access to 1,000,000 Druax, because you can do it too. So the idea and premise here is Falcon Scoria. Now I have a heavy helm and I have a light shoulder. The reason for that is the Undaunted passive here, Metal. Now as a Dunmer, I'm only getting 6% stamina, so I need to get more stamina to get close to that 40,000 mark. The ideal benchmark for every stamina build right now is 40,000 stamina, 4,000 weapon damage. If you can hit those numbers at endgame, you're rocking, and I'm really close. How do you level Undaunted? Do your daily pledges. Do them both. You can also complete dungeon achievements as well. So I have good old Hundine's Rage. It still works very well. I didn't have to recraft a new set of gear. And what most people are running now that do not have access to Scoria or a 2-piece helm set, they're running 5 Hundine's Rage and then 4 pieces of Night Mother. Or you can run 5 Night Mother and 4 pieces of Hundine's Rage, depending on your build and what you want to focus on. So it's an option for you if you don't have Falcon Scoria. It drops in City of Ash. And then the shoulder you can get from the Undaunted pledges. Hundine's Rage 6 trait, very, very easy to get. A lot of people have it. And you want to go Infused and Divines on your small pieces. Heavy pieces, so chest, head, legs infused for max stats. Divines for everything else. I'm using the Weapon Power Mundus Stone. So Weapon Power Mundus Stone. You can 22 stamina recovery, that's a lot. Weapon Power Mundus Stone, what this does for us is increases our weapon damage tremendously. Now if you have problems with sustained and stamina, switch this out for the Serpent. Don't switch your gear out. You shouldn't have a whole lot of problems with stamina and sustain on a Dragonknight. Reason why is the Earth and Heart passes. They're absolutely incredible. Battle Roar gives us a flood of resources, and now it's based off our max stamina. That's huge. Mountain's Blessing. It gives us a way to produce ultimate faster, plus grants us major brutality, so we're going to use this constantly. Finally, Helping Hands. Activating Earth and Heart ability restores 5% stamina. Yes, please. So you can spam cast abilities to get stamina back, you can use ultimates, and you build ultimate one of the fastest ways. So, that's how we sustained, along with using potions, allowing us to focus more on pure damage. So, Hundine's Rage, we talked about the craftable sets, talked about which traits. Next is Ring of Agility. These suckers are hard to get a hold of, they're ultra expensive, and there's a good reason for it. It works. How you get these guys is going into Imperial City, and I forget which place drops them, but it's Monster Tooth. And so you're going to want to get the Monster Teeth and open up these vaults. You can also you can buy them at the Guild Trader. They're going for around 400,000 on PC North American server, so it's very, very expensive. If you don't have access to that, that's okay. You can buy PvP Shadow Walker rings, or you can go to the Fighters Guild and just buy a good old robust ring neck jewelry piece. It's still very, very good. Even at VR 14 level gear, that's better than nothing. And you can buy those at the Fighters Guild at level 10, level 30, VR1. Just whatever mobs are at VR1, go to the Fighters Guild there and buy it. Okay, so you notice that I'm using daggers for this specific build. Why? Daggers PvE, great, because mobs do not have resistance to critical. So that's why I like daggers in PvE. PvP, however, I go with hammers or a maul, because you want that more armor penetration. So I do precise traits here, and I notice the one glyph is a weapon damage enchant. Something that is common just now is using infused on your dagger with weapon damage on one, and then another enchant on the other. So flame is usually not the highest producing damage enchant, but for this I want all fire damage that I can to proc that Scoria and my Dunmer. Now, I don't know if it focuses on flame damage or whatever, but it's really, really useful. You can also go with poison, is usually another good setup, but I like flame for this. And then I have a two-hander maul. Why did I make a maul? I should make a sword, I just don't want to recraft and don't have that much. So if you want even more damage in your execution phase, go with a sword and enchant it. You can do flame damage, weapon power, or even the new thing that does damage to Daedra if you're using and farming the new dungeons. That's all that there is to gear in this build. So if you've been living under an ESO rock, you'll know that the champion points are going to be back to 501, or there's going to be a cap. There's also going to be diminished returns. It's still in testing phase, but I'm trying now with my Burning Butcher to come out with all builds of 501 set champion points. So that's why I did not place all of these in here. The link that I have on my website has this in detail, but here's what I do. Now, I don't go high recovery on a Dragonknight for PvE. Why? I'm using my ultimates to get resources back. So I go max reduced cost. 100 points into this sucker. Everything else, 67 points into Mooncalf into recovery, since I don't have a whole lot of recovery on my gear. Though if you're using the Serpent Munda Stone, have it the other way around. 100 in here, a bunch over there. So for damage dealing, the blue tree, I go a little bit in Elemental Expert, increases my flame damage. Why? I'm a dumber, Falcon Scoria, flame dots. Makes sense, right? Going over here, I do a lot into Blade Expert. The reason why I'm constantly weaving, you've noticed in that parse video, my light/heavy attacks are hitting very, very hard. If you're interlacing light and medium weaves in between, this will add up tremendously. So think about putting points here. And then the ratio here is the mighty, big time damage. That's your #1 source of damage. Piercing for armor resistance and pure strike. Since we have over 50% critical, we really want to focus in on precise strikes. Why? You want them to hit very, very hard since it's likely to crit. You also want a little bit of physical resistance, so I like to even these out. Thaumaturge, I don't focus a whole lot. Why? We're a dumber Dragonknight. Elemental is where we're at. Moving over to here. The primary thing that I like to get is Unchained. It's still effective in PvE, especially if you're getting stunned and CC'd and doing the new dungeons. It happens a lot. I like to split points between Hardening, Elemental Defender. Why? Because it's good for the new dungeons as well. Poison, disease, magic damage, and then Flame. I'm a dumber Dragonknight, so I have some flame resistance as well, and I do play a vampire in PvP, so I like this. I come over to this setup and I use medium armor, to give me more physical resistance, and Spell Shield. Spell Shield also goes a long way for helping you mitigate some of the fire damage as being a dumber vampire. So, couple things to know about this build. 1, should you be a werewolf or a vampire? That's up to you. I don't use werewolf in this because I'm not doing high burst single target. I'm doing more damage over time sustained. Though there is plenty of werewolf builds that are really, really good now. So if you want to do that, this build is probably not for you. Vampire. I am a vampire, but it's strictly for PvP and using bats and elusive mist. This type of setup for PvE specifically does not use that, so I would go all natural. Munda Stone is #2. What should you use? If you have a lot of champion points, you're not running into sustain issues, go with the warrior. It's high weapon damage. If you're running into stamina issues or maybe not an endgame with super powerful gear or a lot of champion points, go with the serpent for sustain. I go with bi-stat food. So high stamina, high health. You want to hit around 20,000 health or so. 19k is where I'm at as a dumber, and I get there primarily using that 5-1-1 setup. 5 medium, so I get the passives, 1 heavy, 1 light. And that's basically it. It's not that hard to play. The reason it took me a while to figure this out is I was overcomplicating things for people, and I wanted to come out with something that could sustain, last a long time into the next future update. Now, once Maelstrom Arena comes out and I get these dual wield daggers in there, this build will shine. But just so you know, you can do a lot of damage with 501 champion points. You don't have to be an optimal race to play the way you want to. Just know that you're not going to get the most damage possible. Races, Imperial Redguard, because they have max stamina. Orc is really good because it has speed and max weapon damage. Dumber is good if you like playing flexibility. If you want to go from magic to stamina and have one character do it, you like playing a vampire, I go Dumber. But just know, that's not the best race on planet Earth. Can you play this build as a Breton? Sure. Are you going to hit hard as an Imperial with the exact same stats? No. Play what you like, do what you like. I love this build, and now I'm going to work on the PvP version. It might take a while, but until Magic Debt, I'm a Burning Butcher. Ready?